What does it really mean to follow Jesus? What does it really mean to take my life and my plans and my future and actually set that before God and say, you can tell me what to do and I'll do it? Studying scripture and inviting my non-Christian friends to meet Jesus, and really recognizing that the spiritual climate of not just the college campus, but America and the world looks a lot different than it did 8 years ago. Christians hunger for a life that means something and a faith that means something in the midst of a broken world.
What did you write?
So wrote this book, Reviving Mission, and what that emerged into was this missiology, the 4 E's: encounter with God, exploring what God is doing, empowering people, and establishing rhythms of community. Not write a book that just critiques what's wrong with the church, but really invites people into the ways of Jesus.
Hello and welcome to another episode of 3 Questions, where I sit down and talk with somebody who has written something that you need to read. I am Pierce Van Dunk from Van Dunk Edits and Editing and Ghostwriting Service, and I am here today with Eric Rafferty, one of the authors of a book I very much enjoyed working on, Reviving Mission. I'm really excited to have Eric with us today to share a little bit about himself and the work that he has put in print. So Eric, I'll ask you our first question, and once again, thank you so much for being here with me today. Tell the people who are watching this video series, who are you, Eric?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, my name is Eric Rafferty, and I serve as the Associate National Director of Chapter Planting with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. So campus ministry and leading our planting efforts. A lot of my history around kind of mission is around the college campus context. So helping students, helping churches, helping InterVarsity staff live on mission on college campuses, and seeing that mission field as a really strategic place for Christians to be invested. So I live in Omaha, Nebraska. My wife, Stacy, works at the University of Nebraska Medical Center as a DEI program manager. I've got 3 kids, a high schooler this year, so that's new for our family, and then a middle schooler, and we've got one in elementary. So yeah, that's a little bit of who I am and what I do. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. I'm going to have to come back to you for some parenting advice, because I've got a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and it sounds like you've got a similar spread.
Yeah.
Always looking for some lessons on how to parent well.
Yeah, we have boy, girl, boy. What about you?
We've got a boy, girl, boy, just like that.
Yeah, nice. I like it.
So tell me a little bit more about how you got into campus ministry and with such an amazing organization like InterVarsity.
Yeah. So when I went to college, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I was really into rock climbing at the time, and was definitely an 18-year-old who wanted to go far away and go live my own independent life. So I went to school in Southern California, and my method there was to look at a map of places I like to rock climbing and see where a nearby school was. So I looked at Joshua Tree National Park, where I had done a few trips, and where's the closest school, and found University of Redlands. Way too expensive of a school to make a choice that way. But what happened was I ended up getting on that campus, and some of the first people to welcome me were student leaders with InterVarsity. At that point in my life, I was just starting to take my faith seriously, just really in the months before college. It actually, on the context of going on a mission trip with my church, was one of the first times I really started thinking about what does it really mean to follow Jesus? What does it really mean to take my life and my plans and my future and actually set that before God and say, you can tell me what to do and I'll do it. So my first lordship decisions of I don't think you want me to do this, so I won't. I think you want me to do this, so I will. And that really began a discipleship journey. It really launched me into a path of learning about mission, right? Again, mission being sentness, being willing to live as a sent person. So when I went to college and found InterVarsity and began to get discipled in relational evangelism and studying scripture and inviting my non-Christian friends to meet Jesus in the Word, learning to pray for people, learning to have decent character, in the context of community and relationships. That all happened for me in InterVarsity. So when I graduated, I felt called to come on staff with InterVarsity, and felt yeah, what more would I want to do with my life than disciple college students and help college campuses have witnessing communities? And yeah, so we had a pretty dramatic call from California back to Nebraska. My wife is born and raised in Los Angeles,
Mhm.
youngest of seven, a close-knit Mexican American family. Big move for her to go from California to Nebraska, was not going to be on her kind of life bingo card. So yeah, but we moved to Nebraska to plant InterVarsity ministry. At the time was one of three states with no InterVarsity presence. And yeah, really the things that we learned as we had this kind of wide open space and 40 colleges across the state of Nebraska, the things we learned about mission and about following Jesus in the context of mission on college campuses. Yeah, those the things that God formed in us in that season really did form a lot of the foundations of the things that showed up in the book that is probably question number two. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That does lead perfectly into question number two. And I won't give too much away, me talking. I'd rather hear you talk about it. But it sounds like how you have lived your life really does come across in the pages and the concepts that you and your co-authors shared about mission being so intricately related to encounter with God. So please share with us, what did you write?
yep. So wrote this book, Reviving Mission, and yeah, so it's me and two co-authors, John Heatbrink. When my wife Stacy and I were area directors planting InterVarsity ministries across the state of Nebraska, our regional director, John, who lives in Iowa, just the next state over, was a really important mentor for us, and was seeing similar things happen in Iowa where he lived. And John and I went through the Missional Church Movements Master's Program at Wheaton together, and that just provided a lot of opportunities. The on-campus experiences we were having, the learning we were doing with folks like Alan Hirsch and Neil Cole, Dave Ferguson, and the kind of constant learning kind of loops and debriefing conversations we'd have. Just one of my favorite people to learn with and to think with. And then Linson was formerly a regional director with InterVarsity in Texas, currently not with InterVarsity, but pastoring a church, actually a growing network of churches. It's two churches, and they're beginning to the process of planting a third in Dallas, a South Asian. In the context of church planting among the South Asian community in Dallas. So yeah, so had worked with Linson some with InterVarsity, and I think similarly, anytime John and Linson and I got together, it was really generative. Yeah, again, these are just guys that I really love to think with, love to collaborate with. So the process of writing this book together was profoundly collaborative and profoundly joyful. So really grateful as a first book for me and for John. Linson has written one other IVP book, also with a community of folks called Learning Our Names. So for me as a first time author, getting to write with a community of others was really helpful, and to not just be kind of in an isolated place coming up with something. But this was really a collaborative work with these guys, and really, like I'd said, was really based off of a lot of the things we were learning in this particular season, when Linson was a regional director with InterVarsity, and they were seeing a lot of planting work happen across Texas and the surrounding states. With John, the work we were doing around the Midwest, and seeing this kind of planting work develop. One of the things we were really looking for was what's a model of ministry that's less dependent on full-time professionals in one place. So with InterVarsity, we know in Nebraska, we knew we weren't going to put a full-time, fully funded InterVarsity staff on all 40 of the campuses across the state of Nebraska. And so was really looking for, like, what does it mean to be a little more itinerant? What does it look like to be a little more kind of empowering of others and not putting the professionals at the center of everything. This doesn't really show up in the book as like in a direct way, but one of the foundational things we were learning in that season, or one of the foundational ways we were learning in that season, was looking at some of the overseas movements that are in our InterVarsity's kind of sister movement, the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students. So looking at Ethiopia or Nigeria, have less, have about 40 staff. So Ethiopia has about 40 staff, whereas InterVarsity has about 1,500, and they're reaching about twice as many students as we are. And so we're looking at, like, what are y'all doing differently?
Right,
You
right.
just
You're
found
doing something right.
yeah. So we found this this pattern of empowerment, that just the staff, the Christian professionals were not there to meet the needs of consumers. They're not there to create communities that were dependent on them. They were there to empower other people. They were there to meet people, help them encounter Jesus, empower them into their context, and they were creating rhythms of community of different people being empowered in different parts of the campus. So we're learning a ton from that. I think as we tried some of those things out on campus, and what that emerged into was this missiology, the 4 E's, to encounter with God, exploring what God is doing, empowering people, and establishing rhythms of community. So over the last almost 10 years, maybe 8 years, that's become a real central framework in InterVarsity for how we approach ministry. I think as we've continued to develop that, and as Linson left InterVarsity and was using that same framework in his church planting context, just kind of kept learning from each other, and had the opportunity to write a book about it. And I think when we sat down to first start kind of sketching that out, it sort of felt like, oh, this will write itself. It's 4 E's, a couple chapters on each one. Let's write the things that we've been teaching about this. Let's write the things we've already been saying about these things. And the real surprising thing for us was once we sat down to start ideating and kind of organizing the book, really from that point on, we were learning new things. And it wasn't just let's kind of, get things written down and regurgitate the stuff we've said before. We were learning new things from each other. We were learning new things from Jesus. And really recognizing that the spiritual climate of not just the college campus, but America and the world looks a lot different than it did 8 years ago. So it ended up feeling like this thing with a little bit of history and some learning from some global context, but I think hopefully in a fresh way that feels like it brings a useful word for where the church is at in the world right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. What really struck me were the stories that you all shared, and the ways that each of you in your own lives and in the lives of the people around you in the various stages of ministry for each of you, those principles came to life in how you would tell those stories, right? Not just the content of the stories. Oh, we did these steps and these good things happened, but there was a real deep embodiment of it for each of you, and that came across very clearly on the page. Another thing that really resonated with me, as I'm someone who went to seminary, spent several years in ministry, and within the past 12 months or so has transitioned out of ministry into a non-ministry profession. So I've been thinking a lot about, okay, I'm not the paid staff right now in the season of my life. How do I continue to embody mission and continue to honor God with the way that I live my life and bring people closer to Jesus around me? Reviving Mission was a really helpful new thing in my repertoire for how to serve Jesus well. So thank you and your co-authors for that, for my own faith.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. So to the third question, we've already kind of touched it a bit, but why should people read Reviving Mission?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I think we hope that this feels like a timely resource, and I do feel like even the process of writing a book over the course of the year felt like what kind of world are we going to be releasing this book into? A year and a half ago from when we started. It comes out December 17th, and it does feel like the world is a fast changing place, and I think even the wars that are happening now that weren't happening at the time we started this, the political season we're in, and some of the changes there. I think we feel like God has led us really. God has been really faithful to lead us along the way. And again, without knowing what kind of world we would be releasing a book into, I think some of the things that we start off saying in the book is that we really are in a season that has felt like winter, and I think there's still truth to that, like a spiritual winter. Some of the disillusionment with the church, some of the deconstruction that people are doing in their faith, and I think just some of the ways that people look at the church and Christianity's love affair with political power instead of Jesus. I think that's left a lot of, especially young Christians, disenchanted with their faith and distrusting of the institutions of the church. And so I think, we hope that in this book we lay something out that feels like an invitation to go back to the ways of Jesus, to maybe offer a critique of some of the things going on in the church now. But I think even more than that, to say, there's that famous quote: "The best critique of the bad is the practice of the better," and to try to even not not write a book that just critiques what's wrong with the church, but really invites people into the ways of Jesus, in hopefully an inspiring and attractive way. And again, with stories along the way that really mark like, no, actually we are emerging from a season of winter. There's a lot that's still broken in the world right now, but actually there's something that new that Jesus is doing in the world too. And we're seeing just instances of spiritual hunger in students, definitely, but even outside of the student ministry, campus ministry context, just a spiritual hunger in the world right now. I think a hunger for an experience of the presence of God. And I think Christians, a hunger for a life that means something and a faith that means something in the midst of a broken world. So yeah, I think one of the things that felt significant for John and Linson and I, and one of the last times that we met together to work on writing the book, and we tell this story in I think the last chapter, but we were sitting down and praying and trying to hear from the Lord of God, what do you want to say to guide us and to lead us in this time as we were putting some finishing touches. Felt like I heard Habakkuk 2 and 3 in my mind. And that's a way that I hear from the Lord is usually with scripture. I think, not ever been a person to get a lot in the way of visions or images. For me, it's usually is like a scripture reference. And the more I'm in the word, the more I have scripture in my mind for the Lord to bring to mind and speak. But this is one of those times where I don't know if I had ever read that scripture before. I knew Habakkuk was a real book. I knew there was at least 2 chapters, right? So I was like, I think these are real verses, but I could have opened that up and found something that didn't connect at all. But what we found was this verse that says, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. And that really stood out to us. I think as we were literally saying, how can we make this plain? How can we make this clear? And I think God really, again, inviting us into writing something that that we'd be able to put this in people's hands, that they could run with it. So we hope it does that. Again, that feels like want to hold that loosely, like this is, it does feel like something special to us. But I think more than like we worked hard in writing a book, it feels like we fell in love with the ways of Jesus in a fresh way in writing this. And we hope that we've done it justice to put it into words, and that, Christians who are hungry for a faith that means something in the world, people who are hungry for encounter with God and a mission that would be good news for the people around them and for their own lives, it would be a reviving mission. We hope we've put that down in a way that that people can really take that and begin to run with that and run in living their faith out in their context. So we hope it's helpful. We strived for a lot, like you said, a lot of stories that would inspire and kind of put flesh on this stuff. But we strive for making that really actionable too. Of like, here's the steps, here's a few simple steps you can take to start trying to live that way. So
yes. Absolutely. And as a reader, I can vouch for the fact that Eric, Linson, John, they did what they set out to do. They made it practical. They made it engaging. They made it very connected to the Spirit of God and what he was speaking to them. When you pick up this book, anybody who's watching this, when you pick up this book, it really will be a practical and engaging tool for you to practice your faith and to practice mission in your own context and beyond, in a way that really does bring you closer to God and brings the people around you closer to God. So thank you so much, Eric. And I also want to thank Linson and John just for bringing this book into the world. I want to thank InterVarsity Press for putting their stamp on it and getting it out there through their publishing house. I want to thank anybody who is watching this, who picks up a copy of this book. You can find the information on where to find this book in the description to this video. Come back again next month for another interview with somebody else who has written something that you need to read. Anything else to add, Eric?
Just would love to invite people, if you read the book, if you like it, we have a website, revivingmission.org, and we're trying to create more and more resources to continue to resource people to live lives of reviving mission. So check that out, and hopefully we'll have even more there to help support you in your life of mission.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thanks a lot.